You ever have one of those days that start off totally normal and then out of nowhere, something weird just shoves itself right into your routine? Like nothing you can quite pigeonhole, but enough to mess with your head? Well, that was me last week. So, picture this. I'm back at my place. Just your typical college apartment, nothing fancy, a bit cramped, walls so thin you basically share a stereo playlist with your neighbors whether you want to or not. I was just kicking back after a long day of classes when I noticed this tiny slip of paper poking out from under my door. Not exactly the envelope or late-night pizza flyer you'd expect, but a plain note. No sender's name or anything. I hesitated. Like, do I pick it up? Do I just ignore a note that appears out of thin air? But curiosity hurts less than anxiety, so I grabbed it. The handwriting was neat, almost clinical, but the message inside? Total nonsense. It said, "Look where you shouldn't, but don't look too long, the eyes are watching." That was it. Just those words. I reread it, convinced maybe I'd misread or it was some weird pun I wasn't getting. Nope. Still cryptic as hell. I tried to laugh it off at first. Oh, some prankster roommate or campus joker throwing some shade. But something about it gnawed at me, you know? It wasn't your usual sarcastic gag note. It felt deliberate, like a puzzle piece sliding under my door that wasn't supposed to be there. I checked the hallway, thinking someone might be lurking just to catch my reaction, but nada. Empty hallway, usual flickering fluorescent lights, and the faint sound of the TV blaring from the apartment 2 doors down. And the kicker? That note wasn't just a one-time thing. Over the next couple of days, I found more notes, always in different spots. On the bathroom mirror, tucked into a book on my desk, even slipped between the pages of my textbook, each one just as cryptic and unnerving. At first, I wrestled with the idea that maybe one of my roommates was pulling some elaborate prank. But then, thinking about who lives here, it didn't quite fit. Nobody I knew would bother with anything. This, elaborate or creepy. Which brings me to the weirdest part. This wasn't just a random roommate situation anymore. Something felt off, like the usual college apartment vibe with pizza boxes and late-night study sessions had turned into this slow-burning mystery show starring me as the unwilling lead. It sent this little spike of adrenaline every time I found a new note, mixed with this unsettling feeling that maybe I was being watched. Or worse, that someone already knew way too much about me. I remember sitting on my bed, staring at the latest note between my fingers, trying to convince myself to toss it out and move on. But nah, unlike my laundry, I just couldn't let it go. Something told me this was only the beginning. Jamie was impossible to miss. Seriously, if being overly friendly came as a full-time job, she'd be Employee of the Year, every year. She wasn't just a roommate, she was more like the self-appointed mayor of our tiny apartment complex. A whirlwind of energy who somehow thought it was her duty to micromanage everyone's lives. From the get-go, she had this way of sliding into your space and conversation without any warning, like a sitcom character barging in with an enthusiastic, "Hey, I'm here now." Here, her presence was intense to say the least. It was mostly harmless, sure, when she's rearranging the fridge contents so everything's easier to find or telling you to eat more fiber like she's some sort of wellness coach. But then there were the moments that weren't so funny. Like the time she casually mentioned in passing, "Oh, by the way, you looked pretty distracted during Professor Hall's lecture. Everything okay with that girl you were texting before class?" My brain did a quick double take. I mean, I didn't think much of that text, it was just a quick message to a friend, but who the hell told Jamie about it? I hadn't said a word. Of course, she just smiled and shrugged it off like it was nothing. Our apartment had its own character too, a relic from the 70s if I ever saw one. The walls were thin, the plumbing had a personality of its own, and the heating system beeped and clanked like it was auditioning for a horror movie. It was small, cramped, and just weirdly cozy in that I'm definitely going to fight someone for the last bit of counter space kind of way. The living room had a slightly crooked ceiling light that flickered whenever you turned on the ceiling fan. It was the sort of place where you expect a haunted story to start. Well, okay, a small college town mystery maybe. Then there's Alex, my neighbor next door. Quiet, mostly unseen, but always there. He'd pop out of nowhere sometimes, like he was shadowing the hallway or just happened to accidentally be checking his mail at the exact same time I was. The weird part was he rarely said much. A nod here, a brief, "Hey there," but his eyes always flickered with this strange awareness, like he was absorbing all the apartment's secrets but choosing to keep them locked tight. If you asked me then, I'd say Alex was like the silent observer in a suspense film, the kind who could be an ally or an ominous presence. You never quite knew. Now, Jamie's knack for invading my personal space didn't stop at strange conversations or fridge rearrangements. She somehow knew details about my routine that I hadn't even told her. Like this one afternoon, I was sprawled on the couch pretending to study, and Jamie breezed in with this knowing smile. "So, don't forget you have that study group with Mark and Lily tonight. You don't want to be late again like last time, right?" I blinked. I hadn't mentioned any study group, ever. But she made it sound so casual, like she had insider access to the schedule of my life. It was oddly impressive and a little creepy at the same time. At first, I tried to chalk it up to Jamie's natural social butterfly skills. Maybe she was just one of those people who picked up any snippet of conversation and pieced together your calendar like a detective. But then there were those subtle moments when her tone shifted. Like she wasn't just happy to share. Sometimes it felt more like she was testing the waters. One time, I caught her flipping through a notebook I hadn't even saved in a visible spot, and when I asked, she shrugged. "Oh, just tidying up." She said it like she'd just moved one sock from the floor to the hamper, not like she'd cruised through my private stuff. And Alex, the quiet one next door, well, he had his own oddities. He'd sometimes linger in the hallway, not quite enough to be obvious, but long enough to notice. One evening, I caught him looking toward my door just as Jamie slipped in minutes later. His expression was unreadable, almost like he was waiting for something to happen. There was this unspoken tension building in the apartment that I couldn't shake. Jamie's invasive cheerfulness combined with Alex's silent watchfulness made the place feel less like a home and more like a stage for something I hadn't signed up to be in. It was that mix of, what the hell is going on here? And maybe I'm just imagining things that kept me hesitant, unsure, but definitely curious. But here's the kicker, despite all that, Jamie was oddly useful. Like when one of my classes randomly got canceled and I was clueless about it, she was the one who texted me the update before I even checked my phone. Or the time when the power went out and she somehow knew the maintenance guy's number offhand and actually got the issue fixed in a few hours, not days. She was meddlesome to the point of annoyance, sure, but damn if she didn't come through when it really mattered. All this left me tangled up in a knot of mixed feelings. Was Jamie just a nosy, overly involved roommate with a weird knack for details? Or was there something deeper going on, like she knew things she shouldn't and maybe was keeping an eye on me for reasons I didn't understand yet? I settled into that uneasy space, half expecting the next weird note to drop somewhere obvious. Meanwhile, Alex's silent watch continued, and Jamie's smile got just a little too knowing as she said, "You'll figure it out soon enough." And honestly, I wasn't sure if that was a warning or a promise. Jamie's suggestions didn't stop, they kinda snowballed, turning from mildly annoying to downright unsettling. Like one evening, I was scrolling through my phone on the couch when she plopped down next to me and went, "Maybe don't hang out with Lindsay so much lately. Heard she's been gossiping about some pretty private stuff." I did a double take. Lindsay was one of my closest friends, and yeah, we caught up pretty often, but Jamie? She didn't just drop hints here and there. She was trying to steer me away from people who, up until that point, felt like solid ground. When I asked how she even knew that, she'd just flash this half smile like she was sharing a secret only meant for me while also keeping her cards close. A few days later, it wasn't just about friends. She started tossing out passive comments about my habits too. "Maybe tone down the late-night gaming sessions," she said one morning as if she hadn't just crawled out of bed herself. "Power naps are great, but you don't want to miss your study rhythms." I tried to laugh it off, but it stung a bit. It was less about the advice and more about how oddly specific she was, like she was watching me in HD, slicing up my daily routines into bite-sized critiques. Meanwhile, Alex, the quiet enigma next door, was creeping into the background of all this in a way that refused to let me ignore him. He was those rare seconds when you catch movement in the corner of your eye but then blink, and it's gone. Like he never barged in or got overly chatty, but something about his presence was persistent. One afternoon, I noticed him standing near the staircase fiddling with his phone, but the way he glanced toward my door felt strange, like he was waiting for me to spot him. When our eyes met, he tilted his head just slightly and gave me this look I can only describe as, "I see you seeing me." It was weird, but not in a way where I could just call him out. Alex was the kind of guy who possibly knew more than he let on, but was content to stay silent unless the stage spotlight hit him. Then came that Friday night, the night everything tilted. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table grading some papers when Jamie showed up out of nowhere, like a storm rolling in. She wasn't her usual chatty self. Instead, her eyes had this sharp edge and her voice was quieter but more urgent. "Look, there's something you need to know," she said, leaned in close, and before I could even process a question, added, "I've been watching out for you. Not because I'm nosy, because if they find out you know, it won't be good." I blinked. "Wait, what? Who? What are you talking about?" Her eyes flickered toward the hallway, making me glance toward the door like someone else might be lurking right outside. Then she pulled out a folded piece of paper from her pocket. I recognized the messy scrawl immediately. It was one of those notes. "I'm not who you think I am," she whispered, voice almost trembling. "There's more going on here than you realize, and Alex, he's part of this too. You have to be careful." I was about to ask her who the hell she was joking with, because honestly, this felt like some late-night thriller script, but before I could say a word, she was gone. Like a ghost fading out of sight, the quick slam of the front door was the only sign she'd ever been there. I stayed frozen at the table, heart racing, paper still clenched in my hand, thinking about everything. Jamie knew things. Hell, she admitted to watching out for me, but who exactly was she protecting me from? And why mention Alex like that? Minutes later, I caught the faint sound of footsteps outside again. I peeked through the peephole. Alex was there, just standing, staring up at my door like he was waiting for something or maybe someone. I realized then that this mystery wasn't just about strange notes or overbearing roommates. It was bigger, darker, and way more complicated. And whatever game Jamie was playing, I was smack in the middle of it. I wasn't sure what to do next, but one thing was painfully clear. Things were about to get a lot stranger before they made sense. After Jamie's sudden exit that night, my mind was spinning. I sat at the kitchen table, the crumpled note still clenched in my fist, heart hammering like I'd just sprinted a mile. Who was watching me? What was this more going on she hinted at? And how the hell was Alex involved? My eyes kept darting toward the door, half expecting Jamie to sneak back in or someone else to appear in the shadowy hallway. The next few days were a blur of paranoia mixed with frustration. Jamie was nowhere to be found, like she vanished into thin air. No texts, no knocking, no "hey, don't mind me" bursts of energy in the living room, just silence. And as odd as it was, the peace was almost more unsettling than her presence. It felt like the calm before a storm I couldn't see, only hear in my racing thoughts. I started piecing together the little clues she dropped. Jamie wasn't just some nosy roommate, she was, what? What did she mean by watching out for me? It weighed heavier on me the more I thought about Alex's involvement. So I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have. I knocked on Alex's door. He opened up almost immediately, like he was expecting me. His usual quiet demeanor was replaced with a guarded seriousness that sent an unexpected chill down my spine. Without any small talk, I blurted it out. Jamie said there's more going on here than I realize. That you're involved somehow. What the hell is this about? He stared at me for a long beat, then invited me in without a word. His apartment was surprisingly bare, except for a cluttered desk piled with papers and a laptop humming quietly. He closed the door behind me and leaned against it, folding his arms. I guess there's no easy way to say this, he started, voice low. Jamie and I were assigned to keep an eye on you. Assigned? I echoed, my brain scrambling to catch up. Alex nodded, meeting my eyes directly. Look, it's not what you think. This isn't some creepy stalker nonsense. It's more complicated. You're part of something bigger. I could feel the doubt creeping in. This had to be some kind of joke, maybe an elaborate prank to mess with my head even further. But Alex's straight face told me otherwise. He went on, explaining that Jamie and he were somehow connected to an off-campus study group, but not the regular kind. They were part of a low-key network that kept tabs on students considered at risk. Like, not dangerous students, more like people who had stumbled into situations or information they weren't supposed to have. So, you're saying I'm on some watch list or something? I asked, swallowing the surprise. Alex shrugged. Not exactly on a list, but you've come across something sensitive. We don't know all the details, just that it's better for you to be cautious. I raked my hand through my hair, sitting down hard on the one chair in his cramped living room. The puzzle pieces were slowly clicking into place, but the picture they formed was still foggy and confusing. Why didn't Jamie just tell me straight up? I asked. Because it's safer this way, Alex said quietly. Too much info too soon can make things spiral, or worse, alert the wrong people that you're aware. As weird as this all sounded, the sincerity in Alex's voice was hard to ignore. It was like, beneath all the secrets and half-truths, they honestly wanted to keep me out of trouble. Still, the questions wouldn't stop buzzing in my head. What exactly had I stumbled upon? Who were these wrong people? And how far down this rabbit hole did I want to go? Over the next week, Jamie quietly reappeared around the apartment, but things shifted between us. Her usual insistent cheer was replaced by a softer, almost apologetic tone when she talked to me. She didn't pry as much anymore, just checked in from time to time with those weird little knowing smiles that felt less threatening and more protective. Alex and I developed an unspoken truce. He'd occasionally drop by with small bits of advice. Don't leave personal stuff out, watch who you trust, keep your phones close. It was like living in a low-key thriller where the stakes were real, but I was still just a college kid trying to figure out classes, friendships, and what to have for dinner. One night, as I was lying in bed, the weird notes completely stopped. No cryptic warnings, no subtle nudges. The weird, slow-burning mystery that had taken over my life quietly powered down. Jamie and Alex still kept their distance in a new, respectful way, like the storm had passed and we were left with the calm aftermath. The apartment felt different, too. Not quite the battlefield of secrets, but more like a fragile peace zone, one built on trust gained in the most unconventional of ways. I often wonder now if I should have pushed harder, asked more questions, peeled back the layers until the full story spilled out. But there's something to be said about knowing just enough to keep moving forward and choosing to let the rest stay hidden. Sometimes it feels like the best mysteries are the ones you carry quietly, tucked away between normal days and late night study sessions. The ones you don't solve but live with, like a secret roommate you never really met. What would you have done? Kept digging or let it lie? Because honestly, the more I think about it, the less certain I am.